still living in Sydney at that time. So I opened it with a business partner and moved back to Sydney. And that was a great learning curve. None of us knew anything about business. And it didn't go great, didn't go terrible, but it was kind of that in between that we made a lot of mistakes along the way. Didn't really make any money out of it, but learned a lot of lessons. And I think I'm a big advocate for learning from your mistakes. That's basically what sport is, you know, you don't just get good overnight. You actually learn from your mistakes and you improve. That's how you get better, is by racing and racing and racing. And every time I raced, I took away 2 things to work on. And that's kind of where I see myself with business is if you don't learn from your mistakes, you shouldn't be in business. But if you can learn from them and improve, that's how you build your business. And I guess that's the approach I've taken along the way, because having no experience, you kind of need to make mistakes and figure out that's not the way to do it. And yeah, I guess after that, we opened Bib and Tucker. And again, it's funny enough, I was actually looking at an investment property with a few people, and it turns out we didn't end up buying it because it went out of our price range and a few things didn't go our way. And that day I just went on a website and Googled real commercial sites, and the site at Bib and Tucker turned up, and I stupidly said to the guys, well, let's just do a restaurant. And I was still living in Sydney. I didn't even see the venue, and they sent a few photos and said, I think we should do it. And I just said, let's do it. And that's kind of how it happened.
It's an unbelievable location.
It is.
I mean, it cannot be any better. I mean, the sunset is always stunning.
I think if it wasn't for the view, I don't think it would have happened. But it was, you know, it's 4 guys who knew nothing about business again, and kind of just thought it'd be a great idea to do it. Which in March this year you probably would have been thinking it wasn't a smart idea. But I think, I definitely took a big risk and threw myself in the deep end. In everything I do, I guess. I think that's just my personality. I do things I'm passionate about and that I want to do, and I find out how to do it after I've made the decision.
I'd kill to have one of those units nearby and feed at the Bib and Tucker every night. That'd be just fantastic, my ideal of joy. So you got the Bib and Tucker going, but you got 4 others. You got Japanese, Middle Eastern, sandwich shop. What was the other one too? Of the
May Street Larder.
That's right.
Yeah,
May
so
Street
the
Larder,
cafe in East Fremantle, which is May Street. We've got Goody Twos, which is a Japanese sort of whiskey and cocktail bar not far from here, and Pogo and Sammy's, which is in Mount Hawthorn. So, and that converted from, it was the second May Street that we opened about a year ago, and that didn't go too well. So we made the decision this year to actually flip it over to the 2 different venues within the one space. And yeah, that was 6 weeks before coronavirus hit. So we were open for 6 weeks and then we closed after fitting it out after a year. So it's been an interesting ride, but yeah, it's certainly not without its challenges the last couple of years. And I think hindsight, would I have done as many as we have? Probably not. I think you get to a point where confidence can kind of override what you should have said, which I think sometimes saying no is actually harder than saying yes. And sometimes you get yourself into positions where you probably could be doing a little bit less and have a bit more balance. So I think that's that competitive nature, is you always think you can go harder and push yourself further and do more and more. But we're in a good spot after the last couple of months, and we've kind of got through it and enjoying life.
So all the restaurants are open and flourishing now, the whole lot?
Yep, they're all open.
Amazing.
All open, and slowly back to, it's taken a couple of months for us to get back to full operating hours and getting all the staff back, and, you know, without travellers as well, it's always hard to, there's always about 10 to 20% of your restaurant that is travellers, because they're always in and out, and they work hard because that's how they get their income and how they enjoy themselves while they're travelling. So it's been an interesting couple of months, but we're all open and going well.
Oh, that's terrific. How do you spread yourself amongst the 5 of them? Because people want to see you. They like to know the idea that you're going to turn up in the restaurant sometime and do something. So how do you manage that?
Luckily, we've got 5, so there's 5 days in the working week. So I try to be at one of them at least each day. Obviously, with closures and stuff, it's changed. But yeah, I usually try to get at least one solid office day a week just to really get ahead, you know, turn the phone on silent and just really get a lot of work done. And then the rest of the days I try and drop into each one of them and have a meeting with the managers, just sort of see what's going on and just sort of, move a few things around and make sure it's looking right. And I guess the way I do it is we make sure we get the right people. I think it's that kind of cliche of the right captain steering the ship, and things are a lot easier. So we do rely heavily on finding good staff to help us do our vision as opposed to the owner-operator mentality where you're there every day and know all the customers' names. So it's not as personal as having one venue and doing it all yourself, but I guess it keeps that competitiveness and that creativity streak in me going, is that we've got a lot of stuff going, and I'm not one that can sit still for long. So I think if I had one, I would probably go crazy. Yeah. So that's probably how we got to this point. Yeah, exactly right.
How many people do you employ? I mean, I suppose it'd be hard to tell actually, but roughly.
Seasonally, it's a bit different, but come summer, probably 60, 120-ish total, thereabouts, between all of them. So Bib & Tucker's got about 64 in summer just by itself. A lot of casuals, open 7 days a week for breakfast, lunch and dinner. It's a lot of hours you have to cover. So anywhere between sort of 100 to 120 throughout the year, which HR is a fun side of the business to itself.
You've told us a fair bit about how you handled COVID and the risks that you've experienced and the difficulties that you've had. Have you found that you've clearly got out of it? You've got out of it pretty well. Have you found as you've been coming out that there's sort of a hunger in the community to start to build up their dining out experiences, or do they have an attitude which is hungrier than it was before the virus?
I think especially early on, it was, after, and we're lucky really, it was only really 2 weeks that everything was really closed and there was really bad, really solid restrictions, as opposed to Melbourne and of the last couple of weeks. And I remember after we just wrapped everything up and I went home expecting to be home for 4 months with everything closed, and walking around the neighbourhood, and I'd never seen so many people walking out in my neighbourhood, every day because they had nothing else to do. They're all at home. And then that 2-week period after that happened and JobKeeper was announced and obviously we had a hard border closure and everything was relatively stabilised and cases went down and we're able to reopen at 20 capacity and of the like. As soon as JobKeeper got announced, we started cleaning the venues and getting staff back to work, making sure we were ready in case we could open with more capacity. And luckily we did because it happened so quickly. So as soon as we could open, we were open for 20 people at a time, which was the first restriction. And, that booked out very quickly, obviously. So you could do 2 sittings. So we're doing maybe 40 people a night at each venue. And there's not much money to make in those circumstances. But at the same time, it was keeping our staff employed, keeping our brain in the game so we didn't switch off. Back then we had, I think it was set menus everywhere because that's the only way you could guarantee it was affordable to do. And no one had any issues with paying $80 a head for food or 100, and straight away it was just they just were so happy to get out of the house and to be out, as well as the fact that I think a lot of people's holiday plans had been cut short very quickly, and if they'd got their refunds from all their flights and everything, they had money to spend. So certainly saw in the first couple of weeks spend per heads were really 30 to 40% higher because they were just so happy to get out and not many restaurants were open. You had to take what you could get as well. These days, it's a little bit back to normal from what we'd usually see, but for this time of the year, having been through winter, patronage numbers are up versus what a normal winter would be like in Perth. We don't go out in winter in Perth. We get Uber Eats and we stay at home and we bunker down if there's a light drizzle. I think this winter a lot of people got out a lot more, but spend per head's probably around 15 to 20% higher than usual. Which is, it's good for us, obviously, coming out of a pandemic. There was a lot of losses in those first couple of months that we're still recovering from. But, it's a welcome change heading into summer with some decent numbers under our belt.
Well, you seem very calm. You seem a sort of accepting of the situations in which you find yourself in, and your attitude is, how do I work my way out of this? Or how do we all work our way out of this? And do we still enjoy it while we do it? I mean, restaurateurs are chronically in crisis.
Yeah, I think I'm just used to it.
When you look around, it's not just COVID, they're always in crisis.
Yeah.
You've obviously got a formula.
No, I think not having a formula and accepting that you don't is probably the only way to stay sane. I think I've been through, there's been times I've been incredibly stressed and it just comes. I remember I used to never be able to sleep because I'd be thinking about work constantly. And I just came to the realisation that me lying in bed thinking about that problem isn't going to get it solved. So why don't I go to bed and think about it tomorrow when I can actually do something about it, or get up and do something about it. And as soon as I learned how to switch that voice off in my head, I guess separating myself from, possible and probable are two different things, right? So you can worry about something that's possible, but if it's not probable, is it worth worrying about? So trying to pick your battles, I guess, because there's a lot of things we can catastrophize and get worried about. But at the end of the day, as long as I can go home to my family and life continues on, losing a bit of money here and there and things going wrong, there's a lot of other worse things going on in the world that first world problems I kind of always come back to, is that if I can have this problem and still survive, end of the day, it's not a bad problem to have. And there's always a way to get your way out of a bad situation if you have the time to think about it and to be rational and not make knee-jerk reactions.
My mum used to have a great saying, and she was a champion athlete too. She used to be president of the Australian Women's Amateur Athletic Association. She had a couple of world records in the 880.
Yeah, right.
As it was then, at different points of time. But she had a great saying. It was, wear life like a loose robe.
Yeah.
which is a great way for her not to get stressed by the competition she'd find herself. And then the challenge of being the wife of a member of Parliament, always under threat, as Dad was over the years. So she had a great attitude. How's the family about it all?
Good. Well, the kids are young enough that they have no idea what I do. They know I earn $1 and I earn $1 to buy them cars, and that's about as far as they know about business so far. My wife is stay-at-home mum at the moment. She was a lawyer, or is a lawyer, but not practising at the moment. So I think she's okay. She's good. I think the first couple of weeks, I think everyone was pretty stressed about the future and what was going to happen. And I was lucky where I've always tried to plan for the worst and make sure that the decisions we make, that our family would always be safe. So I think we got through COVID pretty good. I think the 2 weeks I spent at home was a bit of a taste of what retirement looks like, and I can understand why my parents argued so much when they were in each other's space all day, every day, because it was pretty similar in those 2 weeks. So I was pretty happy to get back to work at the end of it. But outside of that, it's been good. I think it's probably brought a lot of people closer, and for us it has as well. It's certainly those 2 weeks I've had a lot more appreciation of what she does every day at home, and I think knowing what I've had to go through and how hard we've had to work to get through it as well. I think we've got a great mutual respect for each other that we probably, when you first have kids, you probably resent each other for the different types of lifestyles you have. I think it's been an interesting 6 months, not just from a business perspective, but from a family as well. I've spent more time with them than I usually have from being home for those couple of weeks and saw what that's like. And it's been a good learning curve all round, I think, the last couple of months.
Well, she must be a wonderful woman.
She is.
Fun kids. But it's been a real pleasure to talk to you, Eamon. I think you've had, unobtrusively, you've given us a lot of lessons about how you cope with difficulty, how you cope with fame, how you cope with the transitioning from a sporting life to I was going to say normality. Nothing you do is normal.
It's
but
real life.
Different. Different. It's been great.
You've been listening to Conversations at Government House, featuring interviews by the Governor of Western Australia, the Honourable Kim-Beazley AC. For more episodes and chats with some wonderful West Australians and special guests, please